This year's commencement speaker is Guy Raz. Guy is the host, co-creator, and editorial director of two of NPR's most popular programs, TED Radio Hour and How I Built This, which are heard by more than 14 million people around the world each month. Guy joined NPR in 1997 as an intern for All Things Considered, and has worked virtually every job in the newsroom, from production assistant to breaking news anchor. In 2000, at the age of 25, he became the youngest bureau chief in NPR's history when he was put in charge of the organization's Berlin operations. He also served as a correspondent for CNN and as NPR's London bureau chief before being tapped in 2009 to host NPR's flagship radio show, All Things Considered. He launched the TED Radio Hour in 2013 and started the How I Built This podcast 3 years later. Guy has reported from more than 40 countries and covered the Pentagon, the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He won both the Edward R. Murrow Award and the Daniel Shore Journalism Prize for his reporting from Iraq. With degrees in history from Brandeis and Cambridge universities, Guy brings a historian's perspective to the news he covers. If journalism is, quote, the first draft of history, unquote, we are lucky to have him chronicling our times. In recognition of the times we are living in, Guy is donating his honorarium to a program that supports scholarships for undocumented students. Pitzer community, please welcome Guy Raz.
Thank you, President Oliver, trustees, faculty and staff, alumni, parents and friends, and of course, to you, the class of 2017. And I would particularly like to thank the graduating class here at Pitzer College for voting to have me here to speak. And I must admit, it is a pleasant surprise to learn that there are so many NPR nerds here at Pitzer. I only hope I look like the NPR nerd you imagine when you hear the show. So, standing here today, I'm reminded, of course, of my own commencement address. It was a beautiful New England spring day. Our commencement speaker was Madeleine Albright, the first woman to become the Secretary of State. An incredibly inspiring person. And it was an amazing opportunity to hear from one of the most respected voices in the world. And here's what she said. Actually, I don't remember any of it. And it's not because she didn't say anything profound or meaningful. It was just that I was so distracted with thoughts about the future. It was this mixture of incredible optimism tinged with anxiety, fear, and lots of uncertainty. So if you are a little distracted right now, I completely understand. Now, this probably goes without saying, but today is an incredibly important day for you, for your family, for your advisors, your professors, really anyone who helped you get to this place. Maybe you're the first in your family to go to college, or the first to graduate from college. Maybe you did something amazing here. Maybe you wrote an incredible thesis or organized a campus event. Maybe you led a protest or a movement. Maybe you had a professor who recognized something in you that you didn't. I'm pretty sure that somewhere along the way, all of you felt a moment of recognition. You began to forge an identity here. And all of you took a different path. Perhaps it was painless, maybe it was challenging, but you made it. And everyone here is so proud of you. So that's the good news. The bad news is that tomorrow these seats will be folded up, this tent will be dismantled, your cap and gown will go back to the rental company, and you are going to be just another human on planet Earth. the club you started, the movement you built, the identity you forged here, the people outside of this place, the people you encounter outside in the world, they won't know any of it. And it's the cruel reality of this system that we've set up for you. We tell you to study, we tell you to go to college, with the implicit promise that if you do those things, you will be just fine. And there's some truth to that. You know, for the first 22 years in our life, there's a kind of safety net. We go to kindergarten, and then to elementary school, and then to middle school, and eventually high school, and then college. And in each phase of that journey, there is somebody who is cheering you on, pushing you to succeed, to get to the next step. It's happening right now. Except tomorrow, that safety net is gone. You will be sent out into the world to figure it out on your own. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And what nobody told me 2 decades ago when I was sitting in that very same seat is that after this day is over, there is an uncertain interim. There's a period where the ambiguity about what comes next becomes one of the most powerful forces you will experience. What I didn't know then, and what I've subsequently learned from some of the people I've been able to interview in recent years, is that your 20s are tough. There is some very recent and groundbreaking research that shows the human brain, particularly the executive function of our brain, continues to develop and churn and change well into our late 20s. Lots of stuff is happening inside our heads that is a normal biological function of just growing up. Now combine the uncertainty of this moment with a particularly complex developmental phase in life, and you can have a perfect storm that in some cases expresses itself in a particularly dark way. That's what happened to me. So let me share a story that I have never told in a public setting, but one I hope might be relatable. When I was 22, out of college and starting out, I was paralyzed by that uncertainty. I was filled with anxiety about the future. And it was in my mid-20s, for the first time in my life, I began to experience a form of crippling depression that hit me like a high-speed train. I had never known what it felt like to hit rock bottom, to feel totally unmoored from reality, to suffer from a kind of sadness that felt both paralyzing and also terrifying, and at the same time to feel like it was somehow self-indulgent, that somehow I shouldn't be feeling this way. I couldn't talk about it with anyone because, frankly, I was ashamed and embarrassed. I grew up in a very proud home where illness was defined by whether you had a fever above 101 degrees. I'm sure a lot of you can relate. So it was by chance that a mentor of mine approached me one day after a few days' absence from work, and she asked one question. She asked me, "Do you need help?" Now, under normal circumstances, I'd have said no. I was raised to be self-sufficient, to be independent, to think of strength as the absence of vulnerability. Asking for help was something that I thought of as a sign of weakness. But in that moment, something inside of me said yes. She gave me a telephone number, and a few days later, for the first time in my life, I went to seek help for something I didn't think of as an illness. And that one question, "Do you need help?" saved my life. Now, I'm not here to tout the virtues of medication or antidepressants. There's plenty of conflicting medical research about the effectiveness of these drugs. But for me, whether it was a placebo effect or real medical science, it helped, and it helped a lot. Now, this was all happening at a time in my life when I was also displaying outward signs of what many might define as success. I became an NPR correspondent. I was getting my work published in newspapers. My family was proud of me. My career seemed to be taking off. But inside, I was in turmoil. I didn't know that uncertainty is a totally normal part of figuring out your path. And I was lucky. I went through this at a time before Snapchat and Facebook. I mean, my anxiety and sense of failure wasn't heightened by the perception that everyone else around me was doing just fine. Because how many of your Facebook friends post photos of themselves lying in the fetal position on the bathroom floor? I suspect none. There is this cruel irony where, as we become more and more open online, we're actually sharing a curated version of our lives. We're being less honest about our fears and about our anxieties and about our vulnerabilities. But here's the thing. Every single one of you is going to go through some form of anxiety about your place in the world. Because you're stepping into a moment where all of your hopes and dreams and ambitions will start to meet reality. And it doesn't mean that you won't fulfill all of those things and hopes. But it does mean that you will go through a period where there is uncertainty, where you aren't sure, and you might feel even a bit doubtful. So why am I sharing all of this? I'm sharing it because I believe there is an incredible power in showing vulnerability. And for most of us, it's hard. Maybe it's a secret we don't want anyone to know, a moment of shame or weakness that haunts us. And in so many ways, we're programmed to hide these vulnerabilities because we think of them as an Achilles heel, something that will prevent us from being liked or respected or feared, or whatever it is we think we need to succeed. But here's the secret. There's also something incredibly liberating about putting yourself out there and sharing your anxieties and vulnerabilities and fears. And vulnerability is the path that leads us to compassion, empathy, and most importantly, kindness. And you all know these are values we will need if we are to open up a conversation about who we are as a society and to even begin to reckon with our past. You know, I come from a generation that's done some incredible things. My cohort has given the world Google and Tesla and Beyonce and Jay-Z. We've built incredible technologies and made the world more transparent. We have made progress. But my generation hasn't collectively asked the hard questions about who we are as a nation, about how we got here. We haven't moved down the path of committing ourselves to the cause of justice in a way that will unleash the power of our potential. Not enough of us stop to consider that the wealth and the prosperity of this nation was built on the backs of generations of people who were brought here against their will. People who were never given equity in that prosperity. And today, that legacy and that story lives deep in the identity of millions of people in this country. We have been told our whole lives that we live in the greatest democracy the whole world has ever known, that opportunity is available to those who work hard. But we also know that this story is flawed. It does not apply to all of us equally. We know that opportunity often has a way of benefiting the privileged. But it does not have to be that way. It doesn't have to be a false myth. And if it is to become a truth, you must make it so. You know, many of us are here today because of the hardships overcome by generations before us. In my story, they were members of my family who were burned to ash in Nazi concentration camps. The lucky ones who survived or who fled lived disrupted lives. And we know through years of research that this kind of trauma is passed down from one generation to the next. But from the darkness of that trauma came an important attempt by the perpetrators to confront its past. Germany has spent decades struggling with how best to treat this history. The country has made symbolic reparations to the victims who survived. Each year, hundreds of thousands of German school children are taken to see the remnants of death camps all across Europe. Germany's national identity is intertwined with its past sins. And yet today, despite its flaws, Germany stands as a beacon to the world. It's a lesson we here in America must consider, because when we begin to confront our own past, how we got to this place today, we will become stronger and we will become more just. By engaging in a kind of reckoning, we can become a kinder and a more compassionate society. By acknowledging that privilege is a real thing granted to certain people based on gender, wealth, the hue and tone of their skin and their background, by calling it for what it is, we can begin to make this country fairer and more equitable. Now, this is a generational challenge. This is your charge. You are the most diverse generation in this country's history. This is your country, and this is your story. And you will define what it means to be an American for everyone who comes after you. And this will not be easy, especially now. Right now, in 2017, as I look at the world around us, I see an absence of empathy and vulnerability and compassion. Unkind behavior is in the ascendancy. Corporations answer solely to shareholders above the communities and the country they are supposed to serve. We have closed our doors to vulnerable peoples fleeing war and violence in parts of the world. Many leaders in this country lack empathy, intellectual curiosity, and basic interpersonal decorum. And so the truth is, we are at an incredibly difficult time in our nation's history. Our core values are being tested, whether it's civil liberties, healthcare, environmental protection, economic inequality, the rights and protections of vulnerable communities. I can go on and on. And I suspect that many of you have been asking yourselves, how can I actively work to support a set of values that might contradict what our nation's leaders are reflecting right now? What do we do? How do we resist? Protesting, demonstrating, speaking up, participating, you will do all of these things. It's your right and responsibility. But the simplest form of resistance is something each of you has the power and agency to fulfill right now. And it's perhaps the most naive of all. But it's a truth I deeply believe in. And that truth is kindness, empathy, and compassion. These are some of the most powerful weapons we have in our toolbox of resistance. Today, in an unkind world, kindness is resistance. Individual acts of kindness are resistance. They are acts of resistance to anger, to nativism, to misplaced nationalism, to inequality, to injustice, to cruelty, and to those wanting to silence you. In 2017, kindness is a radical idea. Being kind means showing vulnerability about what your heart and your mind are going through. It means listening to those that might be brave enough to share that with you as well. It means being an ally and a partner to someone with less privilege. And it means something much, much more than merely tolerance. Because in our world today, tolerance isn't enough. We have to move to a place beyond tolerance, a place of respect and even love, and you need to lead us there. Now, I'm not here as some kind of paragon. Like most of my fellow Homo sapiens, I am a flawed, complicated collection of contradictions. There are days when I am unkind, when I fly off the handle, when I find myself acting on my worst impulses. The days I honk my car horn or lose patience with a customer service representative. We've all been there. But I'm here to remind you and me that even though we are all flawed, being kind should be our highest aspiration. This is not easy. Being kind is harder than being unkind. It takes work and effort and discipline. But if you make that effort, I promise you, you will change our world. And today, the world is now yours. You own the future. I'm asking you all to do big things for all of us. I'm asking you to lead our country and our world to a kinder and a more just future. So, right now, go make that future for you, for the rest of us. It's been one of the truly great honors in my life to be here and speak with you today. Congratulations on your achievement. Thank you so much.